Hi and welcome to Teach Start, and today we're going to be looking at the language of choice. Now what the language of choice basically is when you have a situation where someone is doing something, a student is doing something you don't want them to do, it's instead of creating a conflict with what you say, you kind of create an opportunity to not have a conflict. And that's kind of the goal of language of choice. So, for instance, if Jimmy is tapping with his pen, I don't know why I'm picking on Jimmy, let's pick a different name, Jane. Jane is tapping on her pen, and you want Jane to stop. You go over to Jane and go, put that pen down, right? That's not a language of choice. A language of choice would be looking at that situation and saying, right, I need Jane to stop tapping her pen, so I need to give Jane an option, give her autonomy of two things that I would rather her do. And it's really, really difficult, and it's not an easy thing to do on the spot. And the most successful teachers with the language of choice have spent a while developing it and figuring out what they'll say in different situations. So you might think, well, hang on, as a teacher, I want Jane to stop tapping her pen. And so the instruction of stop tapping her pen is the important one. Well, we've talked before about how you can use non-verbal communication. So you could just look at Jane, or you could kind of give her a look like that. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of times that works. But if you are needing to be vocal with Jane, think about what you could ask her to do instead, or what the choice is. And you might say, Jane, can you either stop tapping your pen, or if you could just tap it against your hand so it's not making so much noise, which one would you rather do? Or do you want to put that pen down, or do you want to tap it against your hand? My issue is the noise, so you might want to tap it against your hand, or maybe tap it against your leg, which wouldn't make the noise. Instead of tapping your pen, you could. Do you want a fidget toy instead, or whatever? Like, I have no idea what the policies of your school are and the conditions that Jane has. Maybe Jane has a condition that she needs to keep playing with something, or whatever. And it's not a matter of backing Jane into a corner where she has to do what you say. It's a matter of explaining what the issue is and then giving Jane alternatives. Another example is when a student's not doing their work, and that's quite a semi-common one, I suppose, that they're not starting their work, or they're not going quick enough. And think about the options on the table in that situation. So I don't know, James. Let's go for James. So James is not working, and instead of saying to James, right, James, sit down, do your work, or get on with your work, James, you say, James, I'm really concerned because your homework is to finish this off. Now, you can either do this in class, or you can do it for homework, or James, if you don't finish this by the end, I'm really worried that you're going to have to stay back and do it, and I'd rather you do it now than then, but it's kind of up to you. And that is still a choice. Now, obviously, James, if he's sensible, will do it now because he doesn't want to stay after lesson or after school or at lunchtime to do it. But it's giving James the option, and it's making him understand that actually, yeah, there's two options there, and I don't really want to stay after school, so I'd rather do it now. Now, language of choice is not a kind of a global, wonderful thing that everyone should do all the time, and that you should forget all other avenues to go down. Language of choice is very, very specific over situations. I don't use it that often, but there are situations where I know a student will kick off if I get confrontational with them, even if I'm in completely the right and they should be doing their work. I know that there will be a kind of not a constructive discussion after I tell them to do their work. And so for some students, it works really well to give them a little bit of autonomy. Make sure that both options you're happy with. Don't say, well, either stop tapping your pen or don't. And it's like, well, that's not really a choice. And also try to avoid, and I know in one of my examples I didn't, but try and avoid there being kind of a punishment attached to one of them. Try and make it two kind of viable options which doesn't have a sanction, because the language of choice isn't put that pen down, otherwise you'll get a detention. That's not a language of choice issue. they need to both seem kind of reasonable and give the student a proper decision between the two. And it's one of those things that it's difficult to come up with examples because the situations that I use it are very specific and very niche to the student. And I think that, for an example, a student was not lining up in the right place outside the classroom. This was a while ago. And I said to the student, do you want to line up here, or do you want to line up the other side of the door? Because I don't mind which side you line up. And now there's no issue with that, and I kind of thought that the issue with the student was that he was getting disrupted by his classmates or whatever, that there was an issue there, so I gave him an option to stand the other side of the door away from that issue. But I didn't force him to. I didn't say you had to go over there, because I knew the student would probably kick off or whatever. And as a teacher, you kind of want to avoid those situations. So that's a kind of language of choice again, that you give them the option, that it makes it feel like they still have that bit of control. Now, there are some teachers who say, no, students should never have any control. I think that we're beyond that as teachers and in the teaching profession. Maybe if you were around in the 70s and 80s, you could expect that the teacher's word was final, etc. But unfortunately or fortunately, we've moved beyond that. And actually the students need some autonomy and need to have some choice and need to be able to make their mistakes. But you think, you imagine, that teacher back in, when you were in school, who told you absolutely everything had to be done their way. That didn't make you feel very good. And I think that's why kind of the education sector and the teaching profession has kind of shifted away from that and tried to empower students a little bit more. But I hope you find this video useful. If you want to write a comment in the comment section, maybe some better examples about when you've used language of choice to get yourself out of a situation with a student, please write them in the comments below. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to see more from us, please click subscribe. We release videos every single weekday at 5 o'clock in the evening. Thank you.